So we're here to talk about Freud and personality. Well, Freud, the basics of Freud's theory suggest that there's conflict between the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. And within these unconscious conscious mind are other parts of the mind. This is Trey. Now these parts of the mind develop and grow from birth on. When we start out at birth, we're babies, we're thinking about much. We're in what's called the oral stage. Why? Well, because we're motivated by oral pleasures, by feeding, and we cry to get those types of things. At this stage of the mind, we have what's called the id. This is Trey, and this is Trey's id. The id is completely motivated by what's called the pleasure principle. Everything is about pleasure. No matter what, all it wants is pleasure. Doesn't think about anything else, just what gives me what I want right now. If you think about infants, young children, what are they interested in? What gives them pleasure? This is Trey, and this is Trey's ego. During the anal stage, which is the second stage in Freud's psychosexual stages, children are asked to start to potty train. And with potty training comes the development of what's called the ego. The ego is a rational part of our mind. It's practical. It says, hey, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't just drop my drawers and go to the bathroom wherever I want. Or just go in my pants. If I'm wearing a diaper, that's okay, but as I get a little older, that's not okay. So I have to be rational, and the ego starts to develop during this stage. This is Trey, and this is Trey's superego. The third stage is where the third part of the mind starts to develop, and that's the superego, which develops during the phallic stage. Now let me tell you a little story. There was this famous tragic play about a guy named Oedipus. And Oedipus' dad found out his wife's pregnant. He's happy, he's excited, and decides to go see a prophet to see, well, tell me all these great things about my son, really. And the prophet tells him some bad news. He says, your son's going to grow up, he's going to kill you, and he's going to marry your wife. So the king's not too happy about this. He says, get rid of this baby. But no one wants to get rid of a baby, so they just kind of banish him away. They don't tell the king about this. So years later, there's a young strapping man named Oedipus who's been born, and he's about 18 years old, decides, I'm going to go explore the world, because that's what you did at that time. And comes across this guy on the road, gets into a fight with him, ends up accidentally killing him, feels bad about it, brings his body back to the man's wife. They fall in love. Turns out he just killed his dad, and married his mom. The prophecy came true. Oedipus later figures this out and feels terrible about it. And this is what Freud would call the Oedipus complex. Many of us have been or know someone who's a mama's boy or a daddy's girl. What Freud said was there was conflict there because we want to connect with our parent of the opposite sex. And now we're in competition with the parent of the same sex. And to resolve that conflict, our superego develops, which is all about moral thinking, love, about affection, about caring, and higher level types of thinking, rather than just the rational or the pleasure. Freud had two other psychosexual stages as well. The fourth one being the latency stage, which is from about age 7 to 11. So if you imagine what you were doing at that time, well, you were at school. And where did pleasure come from? What did you get out of it? Well, you enjoyed spending time with friends, most likely. Recess, lunchtime, stuff like that. Most kids enjoy that more than anything. And then we get into the genital stage, which is 11 plus, and what happens about that age? Well, we start to hit puberty. So now everything's motivated on sex and achieving sex as an underlying unconscious motivation. So if you put it all together, we have the unconscious mind, which all three parts of our mind, the id, the ego, and superego, are partially unconscious. And then we have the conscious mind, which we have the ego and the superego in. And we have the way we've developed during these psychosexual stages. What happened to us? How did our parents help us resolve these issues? Did we do it effectively? Less effectively? That affects who we are today in terms of personality.